This is a story about Baha'u'llah's revelation. Indeed, of how that came about, shrouded in mystery as it was, as the messenger of God for this day in God's divine plan. So, who was he and what was he like? Well, he was born in 1817 into a noble family in Persia, in an ancestry traced to the great dynasties of its imperial past. From the earliest days of his life, there was exultation about him, a natural grandeur which made him, even in childhood, the object of widespread admiration and love. He learned to read and write, but did not pursue any scholarly or academic studies. Yet, he freely engaged in discussions of subjects normally done by theologians and scholars, and astounded the religious doctors and the learned by his knowledge, his clear reasoning, and irrefutable logic. At the age of 7, he presented a case on behalf of his father before the Shah, and his argument won the monarch's approval. His mother, in fact, expressed astonishment that he neither cried nor became restless, and his father quickly realized that he had an extraordinary son whom he came to love ever more deeply. And in the words of Abdu'l-Baha, he says this of his father's youth: from childhood, he was extremely kind and generous. He was a great lover of outdoor life, most of his time being spent in the garden or the fields. He had an extraordinary power of attraction, which was felt by all. People always crowded around him. Ministers and people of the court would surround him, and the children also were devoted to him. When he was only 13 or 14 years old, he became renowned for his learning. He would converse on any subject and solve any problem presented to him. In large gatherings, he would discuss matters with the ulama, the leading mullahs, and would explain intricate religious questions. All of them used to listen to him with the greatest interest. So then, these were his earlier days, and of the riveting impressions that he had left with everyone that he had met. As years passed by, the first stirrings of his mission, as yet unknown to him, came when he was 22. And when his father died at that time, the government wished him to assume his father's position in the ministry, as was customary in Persia. But Baha'u'llah did not accept the offer. Then the prime minister said, "Leave him to himself. Such a position is unworthy of him. He has some higher aim in view. I cannot understand him, but I am convinced that he is destined for some lofty career. His thoughts are not like ours. Let him alone." Baha'u'llah thus devoted his energies to a range of philanthropies which had earned him widespread renown as Father of the Poor. Yet as his popularity grew, there came a point when he was incarcerated and exiled because magistrates and authorities feared losing their power to him over the populace. And Baha'u'llah speaks of this imprisonment this way. We were consigned for 4 months to a place foul beyond comparison. The dungeon was wrapped in thick darkness, and our fellow prisoners numbered nearly 150 souls, thieves, assassins, and highwaymen. Though crowded, it had no other outlet than the passage by which we entered. No pen can depict that place, nor any tongue describe its loathsome smell. Most of these men had neither clothes nor bedding to lie on. God alone knoweth what befell us in that most foul-smelling and gloomy place. And it was here that this mystery of revelation unfolds. One night in a dream, these exalted words were heard on every side. Verily, we shall render thee victorious by thyself and by thy pen. Grieve thou not for that which hath been fallen thee, neither be thou afraid, for thou art in safety. Ere long will God raise up the treasures of the earth, men who will aid thee through thyself and through thy name, wherewith God hath revived the hearts of such as have recognized him. And with these next words, the mystery crystallizes. During the days I lay in the prison of Tehran, though the galling weight of the chains and the stench-filled air allowed me but little sleep, still, in those infrequent moments of slumber, I felt as if something flowed from the crown of my head over my breast, even as a mighty torrent that precipitateth itself upon the earth from the summit of a lofty mountain. Every limb of my body would, as a result, be set afire. At such moments my tongue recited what no man could bear to hear. In his letter to Nasruddin Shah, the ruler of Persia, Baha'u'llah affirms his role in the divine plan this way. I was but a man like others, asleep upon my couch, when, lo, the breezes of the All-Glorious were wafted over me, and taught me the knowledge of all that hath been. This thing is not from me, but from one who is almighty and all-knowing. And he bade me lift up my voice between earth and heaven, and for this there befell me what hath caused the tears of every man of understanding to flow. The learning current amongst men I studied not, their schools I entered not. Ask of the city wherein I dwelt, that thou mayest be well assured that I am not of them who speak falsely. Think ye, O people, he hath affirmed, that I hold within my grasp the control of God's ultimate will and purpose? Had the ultimate destiny of God's faith been in mine hands, I would have never consented, even though for one moment, to manifest myself unto you, nor would I have allowed one word to fall from my lips. Of this God himself is verily a witness. The years of isolation continued. Then in June 1877, at age 60, Baha'u'llah at last emerged from the strict confinement of the prison city of Akka. Thus, and so it was, that even though the greater part of Baha'u'llah's life was in prison and exile, he had captured the loyalty of millions of people from virtually every race, culture, class, and nation on earth. So, how then should his great announcement and his teachings be understood? Well then, in part, he announced that he was the messenger of God, the bearer of a divine revelation that fulfills the promises made in earlier religions, and that will generate the spiritual nerves and sinews for the unification of the peoples of the world. He expounded about the role of revelation in history, the relationship of the world's religious systems to one another, the meaning of faith, and the basis of moral authority in the organization of human society, on social issues such as racial integration, the equality of the sexes, disarmament, and to those questions that affect the innermost life of the human soul. What stands out in the closing days of his life? Well, just 2 years before his passing, a stirring encounter between Baha'u'llah and a visitor to him takes place. Baha'u'llah received at Badji one of the few Westerners to meet him, and the only one to leave a written account of the experience. The visitor was Edward Granville Brown, a rising young Orientalist from Cambridge University. Of his meeting with Baha'u'llah, Brown wrote, "Though I dimly suspected whither I was going and whom I was to behold, for no distinct intimation had been given to me, a second or two elapsed with a throb of wonder and awe. I became definitely conscious that the room was not untenanted. In the corner where the divan met the wall sat a wondrous and venerable figure. The face of him on whom I gazed I can never forget, though I cannot describe it. Those piercing eyes seemed to read one's very soul. Power and authority sat on that ample brow. No need to ask in whose presence I stood as I bowed myself before one who is the object of devotion and love which kings might envy and emperors sigh for in vain. A mild, dignified voice bade me be seated, and then continued. Praise be to God that thou hast attained. Thou hast come to see a prisoner and an exile. We desire but the good of the world and the happiness of the nations. Yet they deem us as a stirrer-up of strife and sedition, worthy of bondage and banishment. That all nations should become one in faith, and all men as brothers, that the bounds of affection and unity between the sons of men should be strengthened, that diversity of religion should cease, and differences of race be annulled. What harm is there in this? Yet so it shall be. These fruitless strifes, these ruinous wars shall pass away, and the most great peace shall come. After his passing in 1892, at age 75, Abdu'l-Baha, his son, whom Baha'u'llah had designated the center of his covenant and the interpreter of his word, revealed 7 candles of unity leading to those destined ends of the most great peace. Behold, he says, how its light is now dawning upon the world's darkened horizon. The first candle is unity in the political realm, the early glimmerings of which can now be discerned. The second candle is unity of thought in world undertakings, the consummation of which will ere long be witnessed. The third candle is unity in freedom, which will surely come to pass. The fourth candle is unity in religion, which is the cornerstone of the foundation itself, and which, by the power of God, will be revealed in all its splendor. The fifth candle is the unity of nations, a unity which in this century will be securely established, causing all the peoples of the world to regard themselves as citizens of one common fatherland. The sixth candle is unity of races, making of all that dwell on earth peoples and kindreds of one race. The seventh candle is unity of language, that is, the choice of a universal tongue in which all the peoples will be instructed and converse. Each and every one of these will inevitably come to pass, inasmuch as the power of the kingdom of God will aid and assist in their realization. And now, to conclude our story about the revelation of Baha'u'llah, these resounding utterances by the guardian Shoghi Effendi. The revelation of Baha'u'llah, whose supreme mission is none other but the achievement of this organic and spiritual unity of the whole body of nations, should be regarded as signalizing through its advent the coming of age of the entire human race. It should be viewed not merely as yet another spiritual revival in the ever-changing fortunes of mankind, not only as a further stage in a chain of progressive revelations, nor even as the culmination of one of a series of recurrent prophetic cycles, but rather as marking the last and highest stage in the stupendous evolution of man's collective life on this planet.